for asking me to come here tonight. And I feel so inept to be among so many great men out there and women. Believe it or not, my knees are shaking, but bear with me and I'll just try to tell you. I can only tell you what I saw and what I did. When you're out there, that's what you know, just what's in front of you. You don't know what's going on 100 miles away from you. But before I start, I went to Catholic school, 8th grade. There was only 12 in our class, so we graduated with 12. Then I went to public high school, Ridley High, and it was 126 graduation back in 1942. In the 12 years, we walked to school every day, no snow days, and I had the honor of never being late or absent in the 12 years. In high school, I was captain of the football team, and we had the worst team they ever had. It's true. I was on the National Honor Society, I think because the teacher liked me. And some of the things maybe the older, the women might remember, and the men. I'm going to give you something that happened like before the war. First of all, we had the Depression. You all know about that. You had WPA, Workmen's Progress Association. You had CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps. Remember the war bonds? You had the war bonds. Women always were at home, but then when war broke out, women went to work. And the famous one was Rosie the Riveter. Remember we used to save tires, metal, anything that was good to help make armament was put out front and was collected. Aluminum was scarce. Mom got mad at me because I put all her aluminum pots out in the street, got rid of them. Remember the air raid drills we had? We had the blackouts. When the sirens went off, we had to pull the shades down. And of course you had the warrant officers that stood on the corner with a flashlight and a bucket, the sand. So this is what happened in those days. You had the air raid drills, and the kids in school, if they had it during the day, got under the desk. Down at the shore, cars had little holes in their headlight that were blacked out, and also on the taillight they were blacked out. And on the boardwalk, if you ever were down there at that time, the lights on the boardwalk shined inland, and they were all blue lights so that they couldn't see them from the ocean. We were deathly afraid of submarines out in the ocean, the German submarines. In fact, if you ever go to Cape May, where the lighthouse is, if you go out to the ocean, you'll see bunkers out there. It's worth a trip if you've never been there and it's close to home. Take a walk out to the bunkers. They had gun emplacements and everything out there. Germans actually came ashore during the war on the coast out there. So that's something else that happened. Remember, we had the flags that we put out. If someone was in the service, you had a flag with a star in it. I think a blue star for anyone. And Mom had 3. I was 1, and I had 2 brothers, both in the Navy. And if someone died, they put a gold star in there. So that was it. Rations, sugar, butter, meat, all was in effect. Gas was ration. I think you got if you had to work, you got a stick of 4 gallons a week. And gas at that time was around 20 cents a gallon. You had the penny postcard, you had the 3-cent stamp, and if you mailed a Christmas card and didn't seal the back, you could put a 2-cent stamp on it. Things we forget. Remember the Victory Garden? Okay, enough for that. I wrote this down so that I could, when you get at my age, you forget. Kids call me Pop Pop. I was drafted at 18 and 42. We made $21 a month. Well, I was sent to Camp Walters, Texas for my basic training. And after basic training, they came along and I was nominated to go to officer school. I was a decent soldier. I did everything I was supposed to. And they picked me to go to officer school. But on a Sunday, a group from Fort Benning came down, and they were going after men to volunteer for the airborne. Well, I went and joined up. I volunteered to go in the airborne. And you had to go through a good physical exam to get into it. And I passed that, and I got in. I'll mention one thing that happened while I was down there. A buddy of mine, I used to go out with his sister. His name was Henry McFarland. He came to me. He was in the same camp. He says, "Tony, I want to go in the airborne." He says, "Good." I said, "I'm in." He says, "Yeah, but I went in and I flunked the test." Now, he held his papers. So he conned me in to go through. All right, now I took Henry's paper, and all I had to do was remember his serial number. I knew his address and name and all, because I went with his sister. And when I go through the line, the guys were saying, "How come you're going through?" I said, "They lost my records." So all they did was check it off, and I got through real fast. They all knew me. Then when I get to the airborne guys, "What's your name?" "Henry McFarland." Serial number. Gave it to him. "Henry's in." I got him in. I could have been court-martialed. Okay? Now, later on, remind me about Henry McFarland. All right. After we got out of Texas, we went to Camp McCall, North Carolina. I was assigned a 501st Airborne Troop. Now, what did we do there? Every morning, 5 o'clock, 5-mile run. Now, we also have a guy in the airborne here, Jack Agnew. He was in the 506. He had the mile run, but he had to run up a mountain every morning. So they really put us through rough deals. Exercise, calisthenics every day, without fail. Marching, close order drills. All you fellows did this, I know. But some of the ladies just mentioned this so you know what we had to do. Obstacle courses. They were rough. They used a lot of live ammunition, and believe it or not, they shot 50 caliber machine guns, and it was no higher than 2 feet, the bullets. Actually, we saw the tracers. And we had to crawl under barbed wire and things like that. And they had explosions all around. So it was challenging. On the rifle range, we learned how to zero in our M1 rifle. We started out, I'll use figures, I don't know if they're true or not, all 100 yards. You zero in your first 100 yards, you're standing up like this. Then around 300 yards, you get down on one knee and zero your gun in. Then at 500 yards, you're laying in a prone position, and you shot at the targets. And they had the targets like 500 yards away. And you actually could hit that bullseye every time if you zeroed in your rifle right and aimed right. So we were dead shooters. It was nothing for us to see a sniper somewhere in Germany and get him in the head. I mean, you could do it if you had your rifle. It was zeroed in for you and you alone. And you cherish that rifle. We learned how to shoot quite a number of guns. The bazookas, the BARs, Tommy guns, and we also had a great thing with grenades. In fact, grenade probably was one of our best weapons. We used a lot of grenades for close order fighting. When we were practicing with grenades, we were in pits, and the guys were in the pits, and when you threw a grenade, you didn't throw it like a baseball. You had to hold it in your hand and lob it like that. That's how they taught us. Now, when you pulled the pin, that became live. I don't know how many seconds it was before. How many seconds? 3 before it would go off? Okay, whatever it was, they went off fast. You pulled the pin and you really got rid of it. Now, if you drop a live grenade in a hole, first thing you're supposed to do is holler, "Fire in a hole." And the guy that dropped is supposed to flop on it. Okay? That was the thing to do. Now, it never happened, but we were told that it did. And the guy actually did. I probably have a few times, but that's what you're supposed to do. The reason you do that is to keep the shrapnel in one place. You take the blunt of it. Okay, we learned the compass. We learned how to read maps. We learned how to designate fighter planes, all kinds of planes, especially the German planes. And medical training. We had a lot of medical training. So these are all things that we were taught. We were out every day of the week. Sunday we did get off, but we were not every day of the week. And we had classes all day long. We come in for lunch and go back out again. Maneuvers all the time. And what this did, all this training and all, it brought us together. We griped, we moaned, we cussed the sergeants, we cussed the lieutenants and everything. But if I beefed about a guy to another guy, he would beef to me. The other guy would beef. But then the officers said, good, good, good. They're getting together, they're joining together, they're getting together as a unit. And this, believe it or not, made us what we were. We trusted one another, and we got to know one another. We could tell a guy by his talk, by his voice, by his walk, and by his silhouette. That's how good we got to know them. Because we did a lot of night training. So all this went into effect. So before we went into combat, we were well trained, really trained. Now, after this training, we were sent to Fort Benning, Georgia for a jump school. Now, before, let me go back further. Before we went to jump school, we had a lot of jump training. All right, now they had a lot of mock airplanes. They had C-47s. They had this section here, where the door is, and they had that built. They had a lot of them, and they were about that high off the ground. And what they did in training, you had to jump out and get down like this with your knees bent, and you jumped about 4 feet, and when you hit the ground, you're supposed to lean in like on your butt and roll over. We did that thousands of times. We were so good at falling and tumbling. But let me tell you, when we jumped, you forget it. We had mock towers. Now, some of the towers were 30 feet high, and they had a cable up there, and the cable went down to the ground. And you had a harness on you, and you had a static line which you hooked on the cable. The same way, you were on that platform, you jumped out, and they were always looking for your stance and how you held your body when you jumped out. They wanted you in position all the time. And when you jumped out, you dropped down maybe about 10 feet, and a big jerk, and it was like pulls you right back up. And you flip all around, but then you ride down on a pulley, down to the bottom. So we did that many, many times. Also on towers, they took us up about 20 feet and made us jump in water. Now, a lot of guys couldn't swim, but they sure learned a lot just to tread water. Now, when we jumped in the water, we had to take off our pants, tie knots in the legs, and take them and whip them over our head. And that act is like a Mae West. And they used that in case when you jump, if you land in water, you had something to keep you up a little bit. As long as your pants was wet, it would hold you up. If you're wet, you sure would. Okay. Now, when we went to Benning, it was a 4-week course. Now, the first week was calisthenics. They wanted you to get in shape. Now, they had a cadre there, and the cadre, these guys were built like a brick, you know, and they could do everything. So they tried to teach us the first week. Well, the first day they found out that we were in much better shape than them. We could do a lot more. That's a fact. They canceled our calisthenics with the cadre, and we did it ourselves on our own because ours was more strenuous. While we were at Benning, some of the things that we did, they had, what do you call those monkey bars? Monkey bars. Okay. Like you see in school. Well, they had them like, what, 3 stories high? They were up there. And they would put like a whole platoon up on this thing. And you would get up there, and you had to put your legs on it and lean out. You had to turn all around. You had to climb up this way to the top. You had to climb down. And we spent hours on these things. And our bodies were twisted and turned, and you could stand with your legs out like this, and you felt it was okay. And a lot of times, like for push-ups, if you did something wrong, sergeant would say, give me 25. You did 25 without bending your back. It was like nothing. He said, how many did you do? 25. Give me 25 more for not lying. This is what they did. We were in such good shape. In Benning, for one day, when we went outside, if we saw a tree, we had to take our hand, hit that thing like that, hard. Anything that was solid. And if you didn't hit it, they would say, give me push-ups or things like that. But our hands were like razors. We were so tough. We just chop anything that you saw. And another day was running day. You had to run in place no matter where you were if you were outside. As long as you're outside, you had to run like this. Double time. Yep. And believe it or not, the guys did it. Before we went overseas, we went on, I forgot to tell you, we went on a maneuver in Tennessee. Jack was involved in this too. We had a march, it was about 125 miles. Now we had to do it in 3 days. That's okay, but we had to have full equipment. Now we carried live ammunition, carried all our guns, carried the machine guns, carried mortars, 60 millimeter mortars, and we also carried the 81 millimeter mortars. 81 millimeter mortar had 3 parts to it: base plate, the tube, and a tripod. Each piece weighed around 45 pounds. When you put a tripod or a barrel on your shoulder and carry it for miles, you can rest assured you're doing a job. And the base plate was strapped on your back. But we went and we marched 125 miles. This was maneuvers through the hills in Tennessee. Now we marched up and down hills, no roads, all fresh ground. Sometimes you see a tree this thick in front of you, you got so weary that you didn't walk to the side, you walked right through it. And the guy in back of you got the whip, he banged. But we did this, and we did it in 3 days without any sleep. We marched 2 hours, stopped for 10 minutes. We did it in less than 3 days. And they really wanted to check our endurance. That was part of it. But at the same time, it was maneuvers, and we moved around. So we had our thing. While we're on maneuvers, by the way, it was pitch black. We were in a swamp area, and they fed us in the morning, and you could hardly see. I had a hot cup of cup of coffee in my was it canteen? Yeah, canteen. And I was looking for something to put it on. I saw a black spot, so I put it on there, and I went to go eat, and all of a sudden I hear, ow, wow. A lieutenant was leaning over, tying a shoe, and I put the coffee on and burned his whole back. I got KP the next day. No, I didn't. But we felt real bad, and he got burnt pretty good, but he was okay. He finished. Things that hurt us on that maneuver a lot were blisters on our legs from the boots. But almost everybody made it. That's how good a shape we were. And it was quite a feat. Jack, he did the same thing. And I believe someone else was in the 101st back there the same way. Okay, now, I'm just looking at the time. In order to qualify for jumps, you had to make 5 jumps. The first jump, well, before we jumped, we had all kinds of training at Benning. They took us up in 250-foot towers and dropped us free fall, and we had to ride the chute down and hit the ground and roll. They took us where big propellers were, where the wind blows, and they put you on the ground, and the chute would inflate when they put the wind on, and it drug you, and you had to flip over on your back, get up on your feet, and run and pull the chute in and deflate the chute, because a lot of time when you jump, if it's windy, it's going to pull you. So they taught us how to break the chute. They taught us on the plane, let me say, stick with me. Okay, this is the plane that we use. This is what they call the C-47. Now this was the workhorse of the Army. I believe, and I won't hold me true to the figures, on the Lend-Lease purchase, the United States gave England over 4,000 of these planes because it was so good as a workhorse. There were about 14,000 of these built. Now that's a 2-engine prop plane, or Pratt & Whitney engines. All right, now, in the plane, from here to here is a cable. They had a cable down the center of the plane, and they had seats on either side. All right, now, the cable was for our static line. Now, in training, we were taught to sit down, and you might have 9 on each side of the plane. They say stand up and hook up. Well, you would stand up, and you'd take your riser, and you would slam it on the cable, make sure it hooked on there. And the first jump, you were made sure. And in fact, the first jump that we made, we packed our own chute. We learned to pack chutes. The first jump we made, we packed our own chute. After that, the riggers did it. So the first jump, you made sure that you did it right, and you were dreading the fear that you didn't do it. But anyhow, when you stood up and you hooked up, then you lined up right behind the guy in front of you. And your chute's here, and you have a reserve, or your chute's in the back, and you have a reserve in the front. We always had a reserve chute. Now, the static line, when you hooked it up, you stood there, the guy, the crew chief or holler or the sergeant up front, check your equipment. Well, you check your equipment, and you also check the back of the guy in front of you to make sure he's hooked up, make sure that your harness is hooked up, so that you're all okay to go. Then when they're ready to jump, they say stand in the door. You move up, and you stand, you're ready to go. I'm skipping a lot, but I know because I'm going to cover a little more. But anyhow, when you're ready to jump, the green light will go on. The crew chief, at the proper time for you to jump, he'll put the green light on, and the sergeant or whoever's at the door will go, go, go. Now there's a crew chief that stands in the back, right at the door. And if a guy doesn't want to jump, if he freezes, when you go out, you have to have your hands this way on the door, on the outside. If he has his hands like this and freezes, you can take 2, 3 guys. You're not going to move them. That's how strong they become. They become petrified. All right, now, at times, the crew chief in the back, he's with the plane and the co-pilot, he'll stand, he's got a bar up on the top. Now, if he sees a guy up there that hesitates, he'll jump up on his hind feet and he'll hit that guy out. Now, I saw it happen twice, and the guys jumped afterwards. But if the guy freezes like that, and then when you're jumping out in combat, that's bad. But this is what they did. All right, now, on the plane, in order to jump, the plane has to fly around 90 miles an hour. It goes up probably around 200, something like that. But it flies at 90 miles an hour. We're going to jump out of this door, okay? Now, when we jump out, the plane has to go like this, downward. If it's going like this, upward or straight, there's a possibility that the guy jumps here is going to hit this. It could knock the tail off or cut him in half. So the plane has to get down like that so we don't hit the rear of the tail, okay? I'm exaggerating a little, but that's what it has to be done. All right, now, when you jump out, you're doing about 100 miles an hour, and you're supposed to count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. And or else our battle cry was Geronimo for the 501st. That was our battle cry. So you hollered either one or did. I didn't do any. I just jumped out and I just waited for the chute to open. Now, two things we dreaded with the chutes back in those days. They're round and they have a hole in the center and they have risers. And you hang by the risers. Now, when you jump out, let's see what I got here. All right, see this? All right, now watch. That's a parachute. Now, that's on top of our chute. This is what they call a pilot chute. Has Army numbers on it and everything. This helps to pull the chute out. And this is actually what the chute looks like when it's stretched out. You're at the bottom here. Okay? This is the chute that I jumped with in Holland. In fact, this is my chute that I jumped in Holland. It's all nylon. I'll explain that later. Well, anyway, a lady got this from me when we jumped in Holland, and she made a scarf for me. I saw her days later, and she has an M on here for Mom. So I gave it to Mom for a gift. But that's all pure silk, and that we had camouflage chutes in Holland. But we had white chutes when we jumped in Normandy. Okay. When you come out of your chute, you're supposed to check. Well, when you come out, the opening shock, you could be upside down, you could be anyway, because when you jump out, the wind blows you all around. You're supposed to jump in position all the time, but the wind will catch you and just flip you all around. When the chute opens, if you're upside down, it's going to whip you right around, because you're going 90 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, boom, you stop to zero. And guys like us, our backs are always bad. We've had it pretty tough that way. Just to stop right there, in training, we were guinea pigs. In England, we would put guns on our legs, tie guns on our legs, and jump with them. And we did it one time, and we had so many men that their sockets were pulled right out because of the weight, because those guns weighed around 30 pounds. Then they've got leg packs. And the leg pack, you put your gun inside and you tied it to your harness so that no shock was on your legs. And when you got about 50 feet from the ground, or 100, you pull the ripcord and the weapon would go out of the pack would drop off your leg, and that would land first, and when you landed, you had your gun with you. But in training, we did that an awful lot. When you jump out, you have no sense of feeling what you're doing up there. You're just floating. You have to check your chute, make sure that no panels are blown or anything like that, or nothing's ripped, and the chute is inflated. I had to use my reserve twice because I had blown panels on both times. My chute just ripped apart, and I had to pull my reserve, and I come down with 2 chutes. And you come down a little faster with your reserve. And another time, I jumped, and I had a Mexican jumped ahead of me. He was lighter than me, and I was heavier, and I landed right on top of his chute when it opened up. And I was smart enough to run off, and I grabbed the side, and the chutes didn't deflate. So it was fortunate that way. But when you are in the air, you have no sense of feeling whether you're going up or down. It's quiet. you look around, and if you see another chute and you see you're going down, you have a sense of feeling going down. But sometimes that current we catch, you might go up a little bit. But when you get close to the ground, about 100 feet, you're supposed to prepare for landing. Now, to prepare for landing, you have to make sure that your wind is in the back. You have to get the sense of feeling of which way you're going. Now, if you're going this way and the wind's pushing this way, you have to do something because you don't want to land going backwards. Now, you couldn't steer our chutes. We were at the mercy of the wind. The only thing we could do with our chute was turn around. You could pull down a rise a little bit and it might guide you a little bit, but very little. But in order to face yourself downwind, you had to take your risers and put your hands up here and twist it around if you were backwards. And that would just turn you right around so you were headed into the wind. Now, in training, you're supposed to land with your feet 8 inches apart, knees bent, and hold on the riser and prepare to roll when you hit. Well, imagine coming down 15 to 20 miles an hour, straight down, and you hit the ground. No way you're going to roll. You hit the ground and you just plow. And that's the way 90% of the guys. Do you ever see anybody stand up, land standing up? I didn't. Everybody just plowed the ground. And in Fort Benning, most of the ground had cactus. And there was a frying pan. It was that was part of it. If you're going to land in trees, what you had to do, cross your legs, because you didn't want any limbs to come up into your crotch. That was smart. But you had to cross your legs and more or less put it like this, protect your face and pray. That's about what you did. So they did prepare you for different landings. Okay. After 5 jumps, the first jumps are 1,200 feet. In order to qualify, you have to go 5 times, or 800 feet, I'm sorry. The last jump is 1,200, and that's at night. You had a night jump. And once you made your 5 jumps, you qualified to become a paratrooper. Then they had a ceremony, and they gave you the wings. That's these wings right here. And it also allowed us to blouse our pants. That's these pants were allowed to blouse them over our boots. We weren't up until then. And by doing that, we became an elite group. We were special. At least we thought so. But truthfully, the men in that unit, the airborne units, were special. So it also meant that we got an additional $50 a month pay, jump pay. So that was a plus. Yes. So now we got $80 a month for being, and once you qualified, you couldn't refuse to jump anymore. Court-martial. You had to jump. I jumped 16 times. I know fellows out here have jumped more. I jumped 16 times and never landed in an airplane. My first 16 times up. All right, now I'm going to jump all the way into England. We were shipped over to England, and we were all part of the 101st Airborne. There was the 501 Regiment, the 502 Regiment, the 506 Regiment, that's what Jack was in, and the 327th Glider outfit. Then they had heavy weapons, part of the 327. And that was our group. I was with the 501. We, as a group, we obeyed our officers. We were disciplined. We did what we were supposed to do. We respected one another. And this is what made us probably one of the better fighting groups. And I'm not downing any one of you guys, because I know you guys did a lot more than we did, a lot of you. So I'm just telling you what we did and what we thought and how we reacted at that time. We were considered the elite. I know in battle that's where it paid off, because later on I'll tell you, because of the way we trusted one another. And we did all this training because Hitler, wanted to take all of Europe and all that. So I'm going to give you a little insight. I'm going to jump ahead now to the longest day, D-Day. All right, now we prepared all this time for D-Day, night fighting, everything in England. We did the same thing over and over and over, compass reading, map reading, you name it. We did it all again, and we constantly did it. All right, now, about 2 weeks before the invasion, we were sent to southern England, and we were put in marshalling yards. Now, marshalling yards are nothing like, it's like a big prison you see here. Once you're in there, we're in barbed wire, you can't get out. There's guards there, and the reason you can't get out because we had meetings there, and they told us the war plan. This is when they told us that we're going to attack Germany, we're going to jump in the Cherbourg Peninsula, we're going to jump in Normandy, and it's going to be on June the 5th at night at 1 o'clock in the morning. And what they did, in the marshalling yards, once you're in there, you couldn't get out because you knew what was going on. If you let it out the secret, it's threatening. So anyhow, while we're in there, they had Americans dressed in German uniforms to get us familiar with the Germans. They had all kinds of planes hanging around that you could get oriented with everything. And they also had sand tables. And everybody had a sand table. Each outfit had his own sand table. And on the sand table had the layout of the land where you're supposed to land. This is a map, original map that we used when we jumped in Normandy. I was supposed to land at St. Condamont. I landed up near St. Marie de Lys. If you know where that picture of the guy in the church and the bells and things like that, that's about where I landed. When I where am I now? In France, okay. See what happens at 80 years old? Okay. While we're in the marshalling yards, we sharpened all our rifle, our bayonets and things like that, and got everything ready. We prepared bundles. We wrapped all of our armor, medical equipment, K-rations, and everything, put them in bundles, and they were about the size of this table, about that big around. And they might have weighed 200-300 pounds when they're fully loaded. And some of those bundles were put under the planes, and some were put in the door, which was a fiasco. Because before you jump, we were supposed to push them out. I'll explain that later, what happened. We did all this. Now, June the 5th, it was foggy, and they canceled it. So they delayed the invasion for 24 hours. So we jumped on June the 6th. So on June the 5th, 1 o'clock in the morning, we went, or the 6th, 10 o'clock, we went to the airport, loaded on the planes. Now when we went on the planes, we had so much equipment on us, and I must have had 6 grenades in front of me, 8 or 9 K rations. We also had gas masks. We carried them all the time. We were afraid of gas attacks. We also wore impregnated underwear, long underwear, and it was all treated. And if they sent gas, it was supposed to protect it from gas. Well, we wore that for about a week in Normandy, and we all broke out in blisters, so we had to take them off. So they were afraid of gas, and in fact, we had gas training galore with our gas masks. All right, at 10 o'clock, we loaded the planes, and we took off. when we took off, we didn't know where we were going. You know, we knew we were going to fly, but we flew for about 2 hours. Now, in the plane, of course, everybody's scared. You had to be. Some guys sang, believe it or not. A lot of guys prayed. Some guys slept. A lot of guys threw up. And one of the songs that they sing, I guess you'll know, I'll sing the good verse. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. And we ain't going to jump no more. But we had other verses, and the clean ones. But we sang that, and that broke a lot of the tension and all, things like that. So the guys acted up and they clowned around, but most of all, they're all really scared. All right, now about, while we're flying, the plan was to fly 500 feet over the channel, that close to the water. Then we got close to land, we were supposed to shoot up to 1,500 feet and level off. All right, that was the plan. All right, now while we're flying over the channel, we could see, it was moonlight, we could see boats and boats and boats all over it. Probably you guys were down there. And we felt sorry for you fellows down in the water, really. And we couldn't imagine how they could master so many ships. All right, now, when we got close to land, they said, stand up and hook up. So we stood up and we hooked up. And it was, you know, guys were still climbing around. Then as we're flying, I mean, we're flying like this, maybe about 1,500 feet. Now, the planes flew in a V formation. There were 9 planes in one stack, and they were staggered so that one plane wouldn't hit the other guy coming down. That was the way they flew. The lights, they kept all the lights on. Most of the pilots were green pilots, never flew this type of formation, 100 feet apart from the other plane, stacked in 9. That's the way we flew over. The line of planes was approximately 250 to 300 miles long. That was the Armada. That's how it was. Okay, now when we get over the channel, we start to fly. All right, the pilot says when we hit land, they're singing and hollering. The pilot goes like this: "We are now over enemy territory." Guess what happened?
Silence.
That's it, quiet. It just got quiet, just like that. Now they said stand in the door, so we stood in the door. Now all of a sudden, the planes are going like this, all over. This is just the way we were flying. What happened, they hit a cloud bank. And the pilots were so afraid because they were green, they were going to crash the other plane. They spread out. This is why we were all spread out all over the continent. When we got through the cloud, you looked out, you didn't see any planes. You were by yourself, more or less. But you heard, whoosh, bang, and you look outside and you see big puffs of black smoke. And you look down and you see red, green, blue, purple, all coming up at you. And this is anti-aircraft and ACAC and small weapons all coming up at you. Now, the planes were being hit, and the concussion would knock the planes to the side, things like at the ACAC and all. Look, I'm shaking. I'll put it down. When I jumped out, I was doing about 150 miles an hour, and I was at least 1,500 feet up in the air. We were supposed to jump at 500 feet to get on the ground real fast. That was the plan. I was up in the air a long time, and all I could see and hear were all these puffs of smoke. I could hear shrapnel hitting the webbing and going into the chutes I was never hit coming down. I often wonder how the guys got to the ground, because if you hold these sparklers, that's exactly what it looked like. And that's what we jumped into. So it was, okay. All right, when I landed, I was near St. Marie-de-Lys, and I knew I had to go south because that's what we were trained to do. And actually, what we're supposed to do when we land, one of the techniques of landing, you either go to the first guy or the last guy and group together. But a lot of times you take the middle guy and he stays still, and the guys on each end come together. So there's different plans that you can use. Okay, now when you hit the ground, okay, there were passwords. Now, the famous password was, wait a minute, I don't know if I can get it working. If I landed and I saw someone, we all had crickets. And if I went like this, if you were an American, you would go, I knew you were an American. If you didn't, it was you know, it could just be the opposite. So this was our password. We also had a verbal password. Now, the verbal password, I would say flash. And if you were an American, you would say thunder or welcome. Now, they used thunder or welcome because if it was a German, he would say dunder or welcome. So you could catch the language. So you had a double protection. So they were the two passwords that we had. Here, they're clicking for me. Okay. I ended up with about 12 guys. What we did, we were all alone, and whoever we could make contact with, that's who you travel around with. I was with 12 guys. This is how it sounded when we were in Normandy. So, I don't know what that is, but we'll overcome it. Okay, just don't pay attention to it. All right, well, where was I? Okay, all right. Don't get old. All right. Maybe it's me.
What's the code word?
Klondike.
Finish that dirty song.
Okay, while we're in there, we joined up as groups. I got in the gang with about 12 guys. I didn't know any of them. In fact, 2 of the guys were from the 82nd Airborne. We were so well trained that the guy that took the initiative and I saw sergeants follow GIs, regular GIs. I mean, that's the way it was. But the guy that took the initiative, that's who you followed. Now, with the 12 guys that I was with, we would go along, and if we saw wires or things like that, you cut them, you try to disrupt everything. You would come across a strong roadblock, and I'll give you an example of one of them. We came across an intersection, and they were firing. It was machine guns. So what we did, I happened to be the guy at the time. I took 4 guys. I said, all right, you 4 guys go here, you 4 guys go there. We went flanked, and the 4 guys in front. 4 guys tried to keep them busy, and the guys on the side just ran and overcame them with grenades. This is how we knocked out the roadblock. Now, we did this with 12 strangers. Why was that? Because we're so well trained and we were disciplined, and you did what you were told. We went along further, and you run across houses. Now, house fighting is terrible. When you go in and try to clear a house out, you don't worry too much about most of the trouble's going to be upstairs, first or second floor. So you try to contain yourself to the first floor first. And that's strictly with grenade and rushing and things like that. I won't go into details on it, but it's a terrible way of fighting, and we've had quite a bit of it. Our whole division, day in day, did nothing but that. You wonder where the people live. Now, when you go into these towns, there's people there that live there. They'll go down to the basement. They'll take their mattresses, and they'll live there until it's over. Then they come up, believe it or not. And after it's over, they're out there and they start the living all over. But a lot of people leave, believe it or not, but a lot of people stayed, and they lived down in the basement. And a lot of times you throw a grenade down in the basement and you don't know where you're going to hit. But this is some of the things that happened. While I was in Normandy, we tried to take, happened to be a barn. Now the barn turned out to be a pillbox. It was all concrete. I was going along with these guys, and we were in ditches. And what had happened, heard a guy, 2 guys crying real bad out in the field. And I said to the guys that were with me, I said, just keep firing. And I ran out, and I grabbed the guy's hand. I come back to the ditch that we were in, because that's the only cover we had. And when I get to the ditch, that's all I had was a hand. And then I ran out again. I grabbed the guy. I pulled him back. I got him in the ditch. And another guy went out and got the other guy. And we didn't get hit, but we were being fired at. And we got in the ditch. And, shaking. My knees buckle. I get the guy, and he's all opened up here. And I take and push things back together. We carried 2 vials of morphine. We all carried 2 vials of morphine. I gave him a shot of morphine, and I even left my other. I go to leave, and as I leave, I turn around, and I look at him. Remember Henry McFarland? It's Henry. I get him in illegal, and what is it, $1 billion to 1 shot? You're going to save him in battle? It was Henry. Henry had his whole stomach taken out. He turned out, he went back, and they took half of his stomach out, and they shipped him back to America. And of course, I was a hero with everybody there, you know, but that didn't mean anything to me. But actually, look at that. So it's a small world when things like, I mean, he just stayed in the same company and everything as we did. And here we land all over Europe, I mean the Carentan Peninsula, and here's a guy you save, and it happened to be the same guy you got in illegal. But anyhow, that's the story of Henry. The night came, and we slept in ditches. We traveled in ditches constantly. And the first night we had string, and we put the string and stretched it out, and we wanted to get some sleep, so the guys would sleep here and there, and if we heard anything, you took the string and yanked it. You warned the other guy. You didn't use any voice or anything like that. Because the Germans were great on patrols. They were out every night. I mean, I don't know how they get through our lines, but they would come in every night and raise havoc. And we had that constantly. And all over, Holland and all around. Another thing that happened this day, we got some more men, and we were being shot at after we cleared another roadblock. Now, the roadblock was like just like a V in the road, and they were at that corner, and we knocked it out. After we knocked it out, we were in the ditch, and we were being shot at by someone, a sniper, and we didn't know where it was coming from. And we saw these bangs on the side of the ditch that we were in, because it was like this, and we looked at it, and we looked at the bullets were wooden bullets. Here's somebody shooting at us with wooden bullets. Now, I understand, which I heard about a year ago, that the Germans use wooden bullets at training. Now, they're illegal by the Geneva Convention, because what happens if they go in you, they'll rip you apart. It's a flesh thing, and they're torture. So anyhow, I volunteered like a dope. I said, all right, I'm going to walk back and forth. And I crouched down with my, I had an M1 at the time. And I crouched down, I kept walking back like this, like I was looking. And all of a sudden, they see the guy in a tree, and they shoot him. And the guy falls, and guess what? He's Japanese. You feel funny things, but there I'm being shot at with wooden bullets by a Japanese. Okay? Now, another thing, I'm going to go skip Normandy, but one thing while we're in Normandy, we had to capture Carentan. Jack was a big part of that. We had to cross swampland. Now, when we went across the swampland, we were in dead vision. They were looking right down at us because it was on a hill. I think they dubbed it Hill 40. They could point and shoot at us point blank. So we ran across the swamps and ran up the hill. And after we get up on the top, a couple things happened. One, we're on top. One of the things, we're pushing the Germans back, and I was in a winery, and I had barrels. Maybe 4 big barrels will fill this room. That's how big they were. And they had walls that high, concrete, in case they break, that the wine wouldn't go out, like you see the oil fields. Anyhow, I'm in. We got the Germans out of the winery, and I'm in there, and I get a direct hit with 88, the famous 88. Hits the barrels, and all the wine comes out. We're up to our knees in wine. And we couldn't get out because the Germans were out, and we had to fight our way out. That was another thing. Another thing, we were going to attack. We were in these hedgerows, and we were going to attack in the morning. And I wanted to see what was on the other side, so I said to the guy, I'll be back. And I go around, and I go to the hedgerow, and I turn around, and I'm like this with my gun, and well, I'll just show you. I come around like this, okay? And I come around, that's how close I was to a German. He turns around, I turn around, and neither one shot one another. I was chicken one night. But I really didn't want to give our position up because they didn't know we were there. But I guess after that they did. In fact, remember I told you we're so familiar with one another? A guy by the name of Pete Nardione. He was coming off duty in Normandy. He was watching, we took turns sleeping, you know, and he was coming off duty on one of the hedgerows, and I could see him. I knew his silhouette just by his walk and his appearance. I hollered, halt. He kept coming, halt, halt. And he comes in. I said, Pete, didn't you hear me halt? He said, yeah, but I know you. He knew. He knew my voice. That's overtrained, isn't it? Weird things happen. Okay, let me go further now. How much time do I have, Don?
You got about half an hour.
Oh, shoot. Okay, Holland. I'll briefly go through Holland real fast. Holland, when we jumped, well, everybody stand up a minute. Just stand up. Put your hands up. Okay, sit down. I don't want you to go sleep on me. Okay, Holland. Real fast. We jumped 25 miles behind the German lines. We landed. What it was? There was a highway from Eindhoven all the way up into Nijmegen and we were supposed to keep a road open so the British could go through. Jack was with a 506. He jumped in Eindhoven. We were next. We were in Veghel. Now the town that I jumped in, on the way over Holland, we had fighter protection. We could see P-38s and P-51s just going around us, as we're going over. And we hit a lot of flak going over. Before we're ready to jump, we said, stand up and hook up. Well, we stood up and hooked up, and they said, check equipment.
May I have your attention, please? There's a black Saturn SL in the parking lot with the lights on.
Okay. All right, we're standing up ready to jump. And I look outside, and I see holes in the wing. And the guy by the name of Doyle was in front of me, and you lean right up against him, you're real tight. It was a 50 caliber, I guess, gun, or a 20, I don't know what it was. But anyhow, the bullets came right through the floor of the plane, hit Doyle right in the crotch, come right through his body, out of his shoulder, glazed the side of my head, and killed him right away. I had to unhook him, and all I got was a grade. That was going over to Holland. I had a lot of close calls, but in fact, we knocked out a tank. I'll get back to it. While we're in Holland, we landed with no opposition at all. It was just like a regular practice jump. We didn't have any Germans till a day and a half later. But in the meantime, like I had mentioned, I gave a lady, the Dutch people came out, and the Dutch underground, by the way, were excellent for us. They told us where the Germans were, and they really worked along with us, believe me. And we also had some French underground to help, but not so much as the Dutch. They were excellent. The lady made this chute for me, and I showed it to you, and she gave it to me as a scar for Mom. But on about a day and a half later, one of the German outfits that were on their way to Antwerp turned around and came back. And they hit us head on. They had tanks, there were 88 guns. We had bazookas. We had no heavy weapons at all. The British didn't get to us. It took them like, 3 days, Jack, to get to us. So we had to fight off a German division. This is a regiment fighting a division now. We had to fight them off. We held them off. Then the following day we got hit again with another division. What had happened, they wanted to come at the same time, and they got messed up 24 hours. They were supposed to hit the same time and crush us. So what they did, they hit us on the north one side and then on the south the other. And believe it or not, we held both those divisions off. That's how good our men were. Of course, casualties were great. They're heavy. And of course, the Germans had more than we did because our guys were tremendous. After Veghel, all this was done, but the road was open, and the British came, and we went up towards Nijmegen and things like that. And then we went up to the Upper Rhine, and at the Upper Rhine, or Lower Rhine, the Niederrhein in it, the Niederrhein, the Wild River. We were supposed to cross the river in rafts or boats. We went as far as having the boats in the water, ready to go, and for some reason or other they canceled it. We'd have been slaughtered if we went across the other side, because they did send a patrol across. I think it was from the 82nd, and they got wiped out. We more or less stayed in our own territory up there in Holland. We stayed on Holland for 72 days on the lines, and constant fire of artillery all day long, all day night. It was terrible. Our Colonel Johnson, he was hit earlier in France, he got his ear blown, and while in Holland they were shooting mortars at us, and he was talking to other lieutenants, and the two lieutenants heard the mortars coming. They hit the ground. Johnson, who had hard of hearing, he got the blunt of it. He got killed right there. So that's where our commander got killed. We had 4 different commanders. They all got beat up or whatever. Okay, after Holland, I'm skipping now kind of the time. After Holland, we went back to France. And within 2 weeks, we're laying in bed, and all of a sudden I hear early in the morning, "Get up, dress for combat." That's all they told us. We didn't know anything. We didn't know anything. We didn't have anything to dress for combat. I had, probably that's what I wore. I didn't wear that, but that's the amount of clothing I had. We got out, and they loaded us on trucks. Now there's a truck outfit that served supplies. They call them the Aussie outfit. They're all colored people, and they drove the trucks, and they put the supplies on the road. Now all these trucks came from all over, and they've been on the road day and night. They came to our place, and they also came to the 82nd. Within 24 hours, they took 2 divisions 125 miles into the Bastogne area. Now, when we traveled, we loaded in these boxcars. We stood up, and you stood tight, and we stood the whole time. We froze because we didn't have any clothes hardly, and we were supposed to have combat equipment, guns and things like that. Some guys didn't even have helmets. Some guys didn't have no ammunition, no guns. So whatever we did, we took, and we got there. When we're traveling, I don't think we went to the bathroom. I know I didn't, not in the 24 hours. I guess some guys went in their pants or whatever. But anyhow, when we got there, we kept on moving to the end, and the lights on the trucks were on. If the German aircraft was up, they had a field day. But for some reason or another, they weren't there. When we did get there, we unloaded. It was in the morning, 1 o'clock at night rather. We heard shells. So we figured we're in a combat area. We didn't know where we were or what we were there for or what. We had no idea. In the meantime, Colonel Kennard and General McAuliffe, who now was in charge. The 2 generals, one was in the United States, another one was in England, so McAuliffe was the head commander. He was an artillery commander. He was in charge. So he had the foresight, he and Kennard had the foresight to go ahead and get the layout of the land as to where we're going. They had an idea. They knew that there was a breakthrough. That's all. We didn't even hear that, but the officers knew. Some of them, I guess. So anyhow, they went ahead, and what they did, they got maps, and I believe it was Kennard took a vacation. He was in Bastogne prior to this. He knew somewhat of the lay of the land. So what they did, they figured out where they're going to put every company and every regiment. So in the morning we start out and we go through Bastogne. Now, I never saw so much chaos. Here comes all these soldiers, bleary-eyed, tired, worn out. They've been through hell, and you feel sorry for them. We didn't know what was going on, but we knew they were in trouble. And they said to us, "Where are we going?" We said, "We're going to go fight the Germans." And some guys had